My boyfriend's bachelor party group chat accidentally included me. I read messages planning how to enjoy one last night of freedom with female strippers and his ex. I never replied. I just sent the screenshots to his father, who was paying for the entire wedding. Hello, everyone. My name is Clara Bennett. I'm 32 years old, and until that moment, I believed I understood the man I was about to marry. Not perfectly, not blindly, just enough to think I was safe. Adrian and I had built something that looked solid from every angle. 3 years together, 1 year engaged, a wedding already mapped out down to the minute, the venue deposit paid, the caterer locked in. My dress pressed and waiting. His father footing most of the bill, which somehow made everything feel more official, more real. Like we had crossed a line where turning back would be inconvenient for everyone, not just painful for us. People treated our relationship like it was already finished, like we had already succeeded. And I let them, because it was easier than asking whether what we had was real or just well maintained. Adrian was the kind of man who knew how to perform stability, calm voice, controlled reactions, always saying the right thing in front of the right people. He never embarrassed me, never raised his voice in public, never gave anyone a reason to question him. I used to call that maturity. Now I call it rehearsal. The week of his bachelor party felt like every other week leading up to the wedding. Busy, slightly chaotic, filled with details that didn't matter but somehow took up all the space. Seating arrangements, menu confirmations, last-minute guest changes, the kind of noise that keeps you from noticing what's actually important. His friends had been talking about the party for days. Loud jokes, half-coded comments. One last night. We're not letting him go quietly. I laughed when they expected me to. I rolled my eyes at the right moments. Nothing crossed a line. Or maybe it did, and I just didn't see it yet. That Wednesday night, I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, rereading an email from the florist about centerpieces I didn't even like anymore. The dryer was humming in the background. Everything felt normal, quiet, predictable. Then my phone buzzed. A group chat notification. The name was chaotic. Random emojis, inside jokes, something that clearly wasn't meant for anyone outside that circle. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe someone added the wrong number. I opened it anyway. The first messages were exactly what you'd expect. Loud, stupid, harmless on the surface. What time are we getting there? Don't let him be boring. I handled the booking already. No, not that place. The better one. I almost closed it. Then I didn't. Something about the tone, too confident, too casual, made me scroll. We're doing this properly, right? Not some tame dinner. Relax. He's getting the full last night treatment. There were laughing emojis under that. Too many. My fingers paused on the screen. Last night treatment. I felt something shift. Not panic, not yet. Just attention. Like a part of me that had been quiet for a long time suddenly sat up. Then another message appeared. The dancers are confirmed. I stared at it, not shocked, not even angry. Just still. Because it wasn't the word itself, it was how easily it fit into the conversation. No hesitation, no one pushing back, no one saying maybe that wasn't a good idea. Just agreement. I scrolled further. Bottle service. Private room. Timing. Details stacked on top of details like this had been planned for days, maybe longer. This wasn't a joke that got out of hand. This was something organized. Deliberate. Then someone typed, "Good. He needs one real night before everything gets locked down." That line lingered longer than the others. Locked down. Like I was something he was being trapped into. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry, and kept reading. Then came the message that changed everything. Are we still bringing her? My eyes narrowed. Her? For a second, my brain tried to soften it. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was nothing. Then the replies came in fast. Obviously. He literally asked for it. If she walks in after the dancers, he's going to lose it. This is going to be insane. My heart didn't race. It slowed, because somewhere deep down, before I even saw the name, I already knew. I scrolled, and there it was. Vanessa, his ex. Not mentioned casually, not thrown in like a ridiculous prank. She was part of the plan, scheduled, expected. Make sure Vanessa gets there before midnight. Don't tell him. Let it hit all at once. It's his last night of freedom. Let him have what he actually wants. That sentence didn't feel like a joke. It felt like truth. I locked my phone. The room didn't change. The dryer kept running. The email on my laptop stayed open. Outside, a car passed by, like nothing had happened. But something inside me had gone very, very quiet. Not broken, just clear. I unlocked my phone again. This time I wasn't reading as his fiancé. I was reading as someone who had just been removed from the story without being told. I noticed things differently. The certainty in their tone, the lack of hesitation. No one was worried about consequences. No one was afraid of me finding out. Because in their version of reality, I wouldn't. Then one message appeared that almost made me laugh. What if Clara finds out? For a second, everything held still. Then Adrian's best friend replied, "She won't." That was it. That was the moment something inside me shifted completely. Not because it was cruel, but because it was absolute. They didn't just think I wouldn't find out. They had built the entire plan on it. I didn't type. I didn't react. I didn't call Adrian and give him a chance to explain something he hadn't even been caught doing yet. Instead, I started taking screenshots. Slowly. Carefully. Every message that mattered. Every line that showed intent. The dancers. Vanessa. The timing. The jokes. The confidence. The certainty. I captured all of it. When I finished, I set the phone down on my lap and leaned back against the couch. For a moment, I just sat there. Not crying. Not shaking. Just understanding. Because the truth wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had already said everything. And then one thought came to me. Sharp, simple, unavoidable. Not Adrian. Not Vanessa. Not even the wedding. His father. The man paying for all of it. The man shaking hands with vendors. Smiling through family dinners. Believing his son was walking into marriage like a man who respected it. I picked up my phone again. Opened my contacts. Scrolled. Found his name. My thumb hovered for exactly 1 second. Not hesitation. Recognition. Because I knew the moment I sent those screenshots, nothing would stay the same. Then I pressed send. The message showed as delivered almost instantly. No typing bubble. No immediate reply. Just silence. I placed my phone face down on the coffee table and stood up, suddenly aware of how still my body had been for the past 20 minutes. My legs felt slightly stiff, like I had been sitting in the same position for too long. I walked into the kitchen without really thinking, opened the fridge, stared at it, then closed it again without taking anything out. Normal movements. That's what I focused on. Because if I stopped moving, I would have to feel it. And I wasn't ready to feel anything yet. My phone buzzed. I didn't rush back to it. That was the first decision I made after sending the screenshots. I wasn't going to chase the outcome. Whatever happened next was no longer something I needed to control. I walked back slowly, picked up the phone. One message from him, Adrian's father. "Where are you?" Not hello. Not confusion. Not denial. A question. Direct, controlled, heavy. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back. "At home." 3 dots appeared almost immediately this time. "Stay there." That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. But the weight of those 2 words pressed harder than anything else could have. "Stay there." I set the phone down again. This time I didn't move. The silence in the apartment changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It felt loaded. Like something was already unfolding somewhere else, something I had set in motion but couldn't see yet. And for the first time since reading the messages, I exhaled. Not in relief, just release, because it was no longer inside me. About 20 minutes later, my phone started vibrating again. Not a message. A call. "Adrian." I watched his name flash across the screen. Let it ring. It stopped. Started again. I let it ring again. Then messages began stacking on top of each other. "Hey, why is my dad calling me?" "What did you send him?" "Clara." "Answer me." I didn't open any of them. Not yet, because I already knew the tone. Not concern. Not confusion. Panic. And I wasn't ready to step into that space. Another call. Then another. Then silence again. Minutes passed. Then my phone buzzed once more. A message from an unknown number. "Is this Clara?" I didn't respond. Another message followed almost immediately. "This is Daniel, Adrian's friend. You need to fix whatever you just did." Fix. I looked at that word for a long second, then locked my phone again. Because no, I didn't. I walked back to the living room window and pulled the curtain aside slightly. The street below looked exactly the same as it always did. A couple walking past, a motorbike slowing at the corner, someone laughing in the distance. The world hadn't shifted. Just mine. Another 30 minutes passed before my phone rang again. This time I picked up. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end. Then his father's voice. Low. Controlled. "Are you alone?" "Yes." Another pause. "I'm at the venue." My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Of course he was. He didn't need to ask where this was happening. He already knew. "I spoke to the manager," he continued, "and then I called my son." There was something in the way he said my son that didn't sound like ownership. It sounded like distance. I didn't interrupt. I asked him a simple question, he said. I asked him if what I was looking at was real. A breath. He didn't answer me. I closed my eyes briefly. Not surprised. Adrian had always been good with words, until the exact moment they mattered. I'm going there now, his father said. To the party? Yes. Silence stretched between us. I could picture it. The lights, the music, the laughter, the confidence of a group of men who believed the night belonged to them. And then, the door opening. Truth walking in. You don't need to come, he added. I'm not going to, I said. I know. Another pause. Then quieter. You did the right thing. The words landed differently than I expected. Not comforting. Not warm. Just certain. Like a conclusion already reached. I'll handle the rest, he said. And then he hung up. I lowered the phone slowly. My reflection stared back at me faintly in the dark screen. I didn't look devastated. I didn't look angry. I looked finished. Not with the situation. With the version of myself that would have ignored it. My phone lit up again almost immediately. Messages flooding in faster now. Adrian, his friends, numbers I didn't recognize. The group chat had gone silent, but outside of it, chaos had started. I opened Adrian's messages first. What did you send him? You had no right. It wasn't what it looked like. Clara, answer me. I almost smiled at that one. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. It's never what it looks like, even when it's exactly what it looks like. Another message came through while I was still staring at the screen. Pick up the phone, now. I locked it again. Set it down. And this time, I didn't pick it back up. Because somewhere, in a room I would never step into, the night they planned was already falling apart. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. I felt like it had already begun. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. Because everything had already settled into place too cleanly for sleep to come. It's strange how the body works, how it expects chaos to feel loud, when sometimes it arrives with this quiet, controlled clarity. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone on silent beside me, watching the faint glow of passing headlights trace across the wall. Every few minutes, the screen would light up. I didn't check it. Not right away, because I already knew what I would find. By morning, the storm had shape. I reached for my phone just as the first light pushed through the curtains. 37 missed calls, 84 messages, 6 voicemails. I unlocked it slowly, not bracing, just observing. Adrian's name filled most of the screen. The progression was almost textbook. First, confusion. What did you send my dad? Why is he calling the venue? Clara, answer me. Then, urgency. This isn't funny. Pick up the phone. We need to talk. Then, panic. Call me back right now. You're making this worse. You don't understand what you just did. And finally, anger. You had no right to do that. You just destroyed everything. Do you even realize what you've done? I read every word, calmly, because there was one thing missing from all of it. Not a single message asked, why did you do it? Not one. The voicemails were worse. His voice, tight, controlled at first, then cracking at the edges as he lost grip of whatever image he thought he could still hold together. Clara, this is being blown out of proportion. It wasn't what it looked like. You embarrassed me in front of my father. Call me back. Embarrassed. That word stayed with me. Not betrayal. Not accountability. Embarrassment. I set the phone down and sat up slowly. The room looked exactly the same as it had the night before. The dress still hung in the closet. The unopened boxes of decorations were still stacked near the door. Everything that had been built toward a future still existed. It just didn't belong to me anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up. A message from his father. It's done. Just 2 words. No explanation. But I didn't need one. A second message followed. I've canceled the venue. Payments have been stopped. The vendors have been notified. I read it twice. Not to understand, to absorb the finality of it. Because there it was. The structure that had taken months to build, gone in a single night. Not because I tore it down. Because it couldn't stand once it was seen clearly. Another message came in. I suggest you do not engage with him today. I almost laughed at that. Too late. He was already trying. My phone rang again. Adrian. This time I answered. Not because I owed him anything. Because I wanted to hear what he would say now that everything had been stripped away. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then his voice. Lower than usual. Controlled, but barely. What did you do? Not why. Not are you okay. What did you do? I leaned back slightly against the headboard. I sent what I saw. A sharp exhale. You had no right to go to my father. There it was again. Right. I didn't go to your father, I said calmly. I went to the person paying for your choices. Silence. I could hear him breathing. Tight. You completely overreacted, he said. It was just a party. Just a party. With your ex? I asked. Another pause. That wasn't even my idea. Of course it wasn't. It never is. And you were going to say no? I asked. No answer. I let the silence stretch. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs space to exist. You ruined everything, he said finally. There it was. The center of it. Not what he had planned. Not what he had allowed. What I had exposed. I tilted my head slightly, even though he couldn't see it. No, I said quietly. I stopped pretending everything was fine. His breath hitched slightly. For a second, I thought he might say something real. Something honest. But then, you embarrassed me, he repeated. And that was it. That was the moment any remaining doubt I might have had disappeared completely. Because if humiliation mattered more to him than what he had done, then there had never been anything to save. I closed my eyes briefly. Not in pain, in clarity. The wedding is canceled, I said. I know, he snapped, because of you. I didn't respond to that, because there was nothing left to explain. The truth had already done all the work. I'll come by, he said suddenly. We need to talk in person. No. The word came out before he finished the sentence. Flat. Certain. He paused. You don't get to shut me out like this. I almost smiled again. Not out of cruelty. Out of recognition. Because now he wanted control back. You already did that, I said softly. Silence. Then, I'm coming anyway. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. Set it down beside me. And for the first time since this started, I stood up, walked to the closet, and unzipped the garment bag. The dress inside was exactly how I remembered it. Perfect. Untouched. Irrelevant. I stared at it for a long second, then zipped it back up. Because whatever version of me had been waiting to wear it didn't exist anymore. And somewhere between last night and this morning, I had stopped waiting for the life I thought I was about to have, and started seeing the one I had just walked away from. He didn't give me much time. Less than an hour after the call ended, I heard the knock. Not aggressive, not hesitant either. Just controlled. Like he was still trying to decide what version of himself he wanted to be when I opened the door. I didn't rush. I finished my coffee first, took a slow sip, set the cup down, and only then walked toward the door. My steps felt steady, not forced, not rehearsed, just certain. When I opened it, Adrian was already mid-breath, like he had been preparing his first sentence before even seeing me. And then he stopped. Because I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I wasn't anything he expected. You're not answering your phone, he said, defaulting to irritation. I answered once, I replied. That's not the same. No, I said calmly. It was enough. He stared at me for a second, thrown off, not by my words, but by the absence of reaction. Adrian had always relied on reaction. Emotion was something he could redirect, soften, reshape. But this gave him nothing to work with. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once in front of the door before turning back to me. My dad canceled everything, he said. I know. You don't understand what that means. I tilted my head slightly. I think I do. His jaw tightened. No, you don't. Deposits, contracts, the venue. Do you have any idea how much money was involved? There it was again. Money. Structure. Loss measured in numbers. Not in trust. Not in respect. I didn't cancel anything, I said. I just showed him what you were planning. That's not what it was, he snapped. The first crack. Small, but real. I leaned against the doorframe, arms loosely crossed. Then what was it? He hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. A party, he said. A stupid party. My friends got carried away. With your ex? I asked. His eyes flickered. That wasn't even your idea, I finished for him. He exhaled sharply, frustrated. You're twisting this. No, I said quietly. I'm repeating it. Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. For him. He took a step closer. You went behind my back, he said, lowering his voice. You could have come to me. I held his gaze. And say what? That you were planning a night with strippers and your ex before marrying me? I asked. Give you a chance to explain it away? That's not fair. Fair. I almost let that word sit there. Almost. You didn't think about fair when you planned it, I said. His expression hardened. I didn't plan it. Then you allowed it. Another step closer. Now he was trying to reclaim space, control, position. I didn't stop it, he admitted, because it wasn't a big deal. There it was. The truth. Not clean. Not complete. But honest enough to matter. I nodded once. Exactly. He blinked, thrown off. What does that mean? It means we're not arguing about the same thing, I said. He frowned. What are you talking about? You think this is about one night, I continued. About a party. About something that doesn't matter. And it is, he insisted. I shook my head slowly. No. A pause. Then softer. It's about the fact that you could look at something like that and see no problem. He opened his mouth, closed it, For the first time since he arrived, he didn't have a response ready. Because this wasn't about defending an action. It was about exposing a mindset. You were about to marry me, I said, and your idea of one last night of freedom included another woman. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. Then what was it like? I asked. He hesitated again. Longer this time. And that silence. That was the answer. I let it sit. Let it fill the space between us. Because I didn't need him to say it. I had already seen it. You humiliated me, he said suddenly, grasping for something solid. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. By telling the truth, I asked. You went to my father, he repeated. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I met his eyes. Yes, a beat. It showed him who you are. His expression snapped. That's not who I am. Then why didn't you deny it when he asked you? I said quietly. That landed. Hard. I saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his gaze dropped for half a second before snapping back up. Because that was the part he couldn't rewrite. Not for me. Not for his father. Not even for himself. You didn't even give me a chance, he said, softer now. There it was. The last attempt. Not anger. Not control. Appeal. I studied him for a moment. This man I had planned a future with. This man who looked the same. Sounded the same. But suddenly, felt completely unfamiliar. I gave you 3 years, I said. Quiet. Simple. Final. Silence fell again. Different this time. Not tense. Empty. He looked at me like he was waiting for something. A crack. A hesitation. A reason to believe this wasn't over. But there was nothing left to give him. Clara, he started. I stepped back. Just slightly. Enough. No. The words stopped him. You don't get to come here and negotiate this, I continued. You don't get to reduce it to one night. You don't get to decide what matters after you've already shown me what doesn't. His jaw tightened again. Frustration returning. Because now, there was nothing left to control. So that's it? He asked. Yes. No pause. No doubt. Just truth. He stood there for a second longer, then another, like he was waiting for time to rewind, for something to undo what had already happened. But nothing moved. Nothing changed. Finally, he exhaled sharply, turning away. This is a mistake, he muttered. I didn't respond, because maybe it was. Just not the one he thought. He walked down the hallway without looking back. And when the door closed behind him, the silence that followed didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt clean, like something had finally been removed. Not taken. Not lost. Removed. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned back inside. Because whatever came next, it wouldn't include him. The apartment felt different after he left. Not empty, just quieter in a way that made everything easier to see. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I didn't turn on the TV or play music. I let it sit. Let it stretch. Because for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like something I needed to escape. It felt like something I had earned. My phone buzzed again on the table. I glanced at it. Not Adrian this time. Unknown numbers. Friends. People who had never once called me directly before, but suddenly felt entitled to an explanation. I picked it up. Read a few messages. Hey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. He didn't mean anything by it. Bachelor parties get out of hand sometimes. You shouldn't have involved his dad. I stared at that last one for a moment. Shouldn't have. There it was again. The quiet expectation. That I should have protected him. Protected the image. Protected the illusion. Even after seeing exactly what it was built on. I locked the phone. Set it back down. Because I wasn't interested in defending a decision that didn't need defending. By the afternoon, the story had already started spreading. Not the truth. Versions of it. That's how these things work. No one tells it the way it happened. They tell it the way that makes them feel most comfortable. Some said I overreacted. Some said it was just a stupid party. Some said I had ruined a good relationship over something small. And a few, very few, stayed quiet. Those were the ones who understood. I made coffee I didn't really want and sat by the window, watching the street below. People moved through their day like nothing had changed. Because for them, nothing had. For me, everything had. But not in the way I expected. There was no dramatic collapse. No moment where I broke down. No overwhelming grief. Just clarity. Slow. Unavoidable. The kind that settles in your chest and doesn't leave. I thought back to the last few months. The small things. The ones I ignored. The way Adrian always kept parts of his life slightly out of reach. Not enough to be suspicious. Just enough to never be fully known. The way his friends joked around me, but never quite the same way they joked when they thought I wasn't listening. The way his ex name would come up just rarely enough to feel irrelevant. None of it had been obvious, but all of it had been there, waiting. I just hadn't been looking for it, because I trusted him. Or maybe I trusted the version of him I had decided was real. My phone buzzed again. This time I opened it. A new message. Adrian. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. I read it twice, then set the phone down again. Because that sentence said everything it needed to say. Not I shouldn't have done it. Not I'm sorry. Not I hurt you. Just I didn't mean for it to happen. As if things like that simply occur on their own. As if intention had nothing to do with it. Another message came in seconds later. You didn't have to go that far. I exhaled slowly. There it was again. Not regret. Scale. I had gone too far. Not him. I stood up and walked toward the closet again. Pulled the garment bag down. Unzipped it. The dress looked exactly the same. Soft. Perfect. Untouched. I ran my fingers lightly over the fabric. Not emotionally. Not nostalgically. Just observing. Because this wasn't just a dress. It was a decision I had already made. A version of myself I had already committed to. And now, it didn't fit. Not physically. Something deeper. I zipped it back up. Carried it to the bed. And left it there. Not because I didn't know what to do with it. But because I wasn't in a rush anymore. That was the difference. Before, everything had been moving towards something. A date, a ceremony, a future. Now, there was space. And in that space, something unexpected started to form. Not anger. Not revenge. Just independence. Clean. Quiet. Uncomplicated. My phone buzzed one more time. A voice message this time. From Adrian's mother. I hesitated for half a second. Then pressed play. Her voice came through, tight with controlled emotion. Clara, I don't know what happened between you two, but involving his father like that, this could have been handled privately. I stopped the message. Didn't listen to the rest. Because I already knew how it ended. Protect the family. Protect the image. Minimize the damage. Ignore the cause. I set the phone down. Walked back to the window. And looked out again. The same street. The same movement. The same world. But I wasn't the same person standing in it. Because somewhere between that message and this moment, I had stopped asking myself if I had done the right thing. And started understanding that the question didn't even matter anymore. What mattered was this. I had seen the truth. And I had chosen not to ignore it. And once you do that, there's no version of your life that lets you go back to pretending. 3 months later, people still talked about it. Not directly. Not to me. But stories have a way of circulating long after the moment that created them has already passed. Different versions. Different angles. In some, I was the woman who overreacted. The one who couldn't handle a harmless bachelor party. In others, I was cold. Calculated. Someone who chose public damage over private resolution. And in a few, I was simply right. I stopped trying to correct any of them. Because none of those versions mattered. Not anymore. The apartment looked different now. Not because I redecorated. Because I removed things. Small things at first. His jacket that used to hang by the door. The extra toothbrush in the bathroom. The drawer he had slowly taken over without either of us ever saying it out loud. Then bigger things. Photos. Gifts. Plans. It didn't happen all at once. It happened the way clarity always does. Piece by piece. There was no dramatic moment where I decided to move on. I already had. That night, everything after that was just alignment. I went back to work. Picked up routines I had quietly let slip while planning a future that no longer existed. Saw friends I hadn't made time for in months. Started saying no to things that didn't feel right, without explaining why. That was new. The silence I used to fear had become something else entirely. It had become space. And in that space, I started to notice something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the kind people talk about. Not loud. Not triumphant. Just steady. Like something inside me had finally stopped negotiating with what I knew was wrong. I heard about Adrian once, through someone who didn't realize how little it mattered to me now. They said he'd been trying to explain what happened, that it got blown out of proportion, that it was misunderstood, that he lost something real over one mistake. I remember listening, nodding, even smiling politely, because that's what people expect. But inside, there was nothing. No anger, no urge to defend myself, no need to correct him, because the truth didn't need help anymore. It had already done what it needed to do. I never heard from his father again. Not a message, not a call, and I didn't reach out. Some things don't need follow-up. They end exactly where they're supposed to. One afternoon, I opened my closet and saw the dress again. Still there, still perfect, still untouched. I took it out slowly, held it up in front of me. For a moment, I tried to remember what it felt like when I first chose it. The excitement, the certainty, the belief that I knew exactly where my life was going. I couldn't find that feeling anymore. Not because it was gone, because I had outgrown it. I folded the dress carefully, placed it back in the bag. And this time, I didn't leave it on the bed. I carried it out of the room. Because keeping it there no longer made sense. Not as a memory. Not as a possibility. Just something that belonged to a version of me that didn't exist anymore. That night, I sat by the window again. Same place, same view, but everything felt lighter. Not because something had been added, because something had been removed. And for the first time, I understood something I hadn't been able to see before. That relationship didn't end when I sent those screenshots. It ended long before that, in every moment where something didn't feel right, and I chose not to question it. In every time I accepted less clarity than I deserved. In every assumption I made because it was easier than asking the truth out loud. The screenshots didn't destroy anything. They revealed it. And once something is revealed, you don't get to call it whole anymore. I leaned back in my chair, watching the last light fade from the sky. No anger, no regret, just certainty. Because the kind of relationship that only survives when it stays hidden was never real to begin with.